Hello, everyone, and thanks for tuning in. Welcome to Kidsstoppress TV, and thank you for tuning in week after week and showering us with so much love. I'm Mansi Zaveri, your host for today, and I'm a mom of two, a fitness aficionado, and also the founder of India's most trusted parenting platform, kidsstoppress.com. As a mom raising two ardent readers and one who's guilty of sneaking into their bookshelves too, I was very clear in one thing from the beginning. I would introduce my kids to the wonderful world of literature that was devoid of boundaries. As much as I expose them to the magical world of Hogwarts, I would love for them to get deep rooted into things that happen right around us in India. Why do they do this? What happens there? Who's that? And all of these endless questions always find a recourse in the books. And that's the reason we at Kidstop Press at the KSP Book Club, which is our very own book club, keep saying this. Every child should learn to and be inspired to fall in love with reading and not be forced to. Mythology, for instance, is something we as kids went about reading a lot back when we were kids. The endless storytelling sessions from our parents and our grandparents on the great Indian epics found us fall in love with them. Cut to today's scene. Do our kids even pick up books on mythology as much as they would like in other genres? They would rather believe a Percy Jackson's fantasy world than prefer reading about how an erstwhile king and a group of monkeys built a bridge back then with stones. Are we missing something? One of the authors in the Indian children's literary scene who changed it all is Devdutt Pattanaik. He writes on relevance of mythology in modern times, especially in areas of management, governance, leadership. He is the author of more than 50 books and 1,000 columns with bestsellers such as My Gita, Sita, Sham, Business Sutra, and The Seven Secrets. Watch our exclusive video and, of course, listen to the podcast on our previous conversation with Devdutt, where he spoke of the relevance of mythology for today's children. And recently, Devdutt has penned a book, this time for adults, titled Hope, Wisdom to Survive in a Hopeless World. The past 2 years is something none of us would have imagined or planned, for we were thrown into the deep, dead sea and we had to learn to swim and reach the other end of the shore. We had to survive. Our survival instincts were at an all time high. With the numerous insights and inspiration from mythology that he has cited in this book, I am sure parents will learn a thing or two. Today, I talked to Devdutt on what prompted him to write the book and lots more.
Thank you. Thank you for your kind words.
So, Devdutt, tell us a little bit about the book and what's your why to this book?
So the idea really came from the publisher, and we were all talking about how we were feeling a little down for various reasons. One, of course, the COVID took its toll. We were all locked in our houses. Many of us were privileged. We had access to resources, but there were many who were not. They lost jobs. They lost family members. The virus itself took a toll on us, and then there was negative news on the social media, people fighting constantly rather than working together in this very difficult times, which I think somewhere you keep wondering, where are we going? Is this the world that we want to create? I know people were talking about migrating out of the country. So these negative conversations were happening around. And, Chiki said that, we need to talk about hope. Let's just talk about it. And we had long conversations on the subject. And I could see that, it was a very personal thing also. And it was, therefore, the conversation became very intimate. And I started saying that how I dip into mythology to get my answers. I always do. And that's what I want to do. So she said, like, why don't we share this with the world? So then, we said, okay, let's put it together, let's organize it and put it in a manner that is easily accessible to people who are feeling down. And as hopefully the COVID is waning, we sort of get some tips so that we sort of become stronger, more resilient, and work towards a better world.
We feel hopeless, realize abundance, explore triggers, address what we can do, try and implement in the long term. Now, have you broken these by chapters? And my question today would be whether with adults, children, elderly, we keep coming back to that one very easily and making those errors and mistakes time and again. How can we change that for all of us across age groups?
I think we must allow ourselves to feel hopeless. It's okay because we are human. we are not machines. Even machines wear and tear over time, right? Over time, every machine will have its own way. Every day we have to dust the mirror, we have to dust the house, we have to sweep and swap the house. Our body needs to be continuously washed and cleaned and maintained. And mind also goes through these cycles. There are days when we feel up, the days we feel down. And the question is, how do we create a whole bunch of tools to go through life, hopefully on the positive side, with very less negative side? But it's always going to be dynamic. So there will be this cyclical journey. Hopefully, our moments in negativity will be shorter and fast, not for too long, and we don't go deep into it. So we will feel sad on some days, but not so sad that we lose all hope. And there will be days when we will be very happy, but hopefully not so happy that we become manic. So that's a natural cycle. I think we should allow ourselves, give ourselves permissions to feel, the fluctuations. That's why coffee is always good.
Also, in this current state where the world feels apocalyptic is not unique. It has always been so. Walk us through key stories or a story where we could draw a parallel, especially for sub 18 years.
When you read, for example, let's pick up the Ramayana and Mahabharata. Ramayana talks about a prince who's going to become a king. It's almost like he's getting his promotion, he's getting everything he desired on one day, and then he's being told, you have to go to the forest for 14 years. Or imagine Sita's situation where she's living happily with her husband, all is fine, all problems have been resolved, and suddenly she realizes, oh, she's been thrown out and she's been in the forest all alone. And you suddenly, these stories are told to remind us that things can happen anytime and things can go wrong anytime. We can never be sure, and there is no guarantee. Or when you read the Bible, they talk about this great flood which comes and everybody's flood and is sitting on this boat and surviving on this boat for several days. So I think these all are ancient stories, are designed to sort of prepare us for these eventualities. We don't want them to happen frequently, but they do happen. We fall ill, things go wrong. And I think that's what these stories are. Each story is telling us, things can go wrong and we can make it right.
2020 saw 1.53 lakh deaths through suicide and 1.49 lakhs deaths through COVID. How do you feel valuable and not worthless? And how do we make, more importantly, our children feel that way, and that too in isolation, right? You know the story of Suna Shepa and in exactly and what everyone feels when his father axes him or puts him up for axing with the king, and he felt worthless. Tell us a little bit more about that.
I think, this is the result of over-individualism and this Western model, which is about being an individual. It's all about me. And therefore, you see it on Instagram, you see it on Facebook.
That's where we're heading. That's really where we're heading. It's very insular.
It's very insular. Now, the trick is to teach ourselves that we exist in an ecosystem of others. And this is the big idea in the book. The big idea in the book is that you are not alone. We are part of an ecosystem, which means we have connections with each other. What happens in mental distress is we feel we are all isolated and alone, which is what social media is aiming at. And let's be very clear, it's aiming at it. The agenda of social media is to wipe out all your relationships so you become dependent on them. And that's the way they're designed, and it's legally permitted to create digital addicts. So we can't fight that force, it's there. So we as families and friends have to work with each other to create conversations, to also pick up the phone and not just be on the WhatsApp group and chat with people who suddenly go off the radar, who don't seem to be connecting every day. So, if I have a lot of friends who are single, so you get nervous that, "Arey, 10 दिन से कोई बात नहीं हुआ है. I hope he's okay." So you pick up the phone. The way we would talk about senior citizens, once upon a time, you would only talk about senior people ki call nahi aaya, inka kuch ho gaya hai, because they're staying alone. But that's applied to young people also. They're going into the Netflix world 24/7. That's a dangerous place because you have to gently nudge them, like anything, to connect, engage, deal with people, talk to people, and allow others to be imperfect. That's the trick. The trick is, like Suna Shepa's story is about a boy who's abandoned by his family because they are thinking of themselves. They're not thinking about him at all. And therefore, in the Rig Veda, he's singing to the gods and saying, "Agar aap bhi mera sahara chhod doge, then kaun bacha mere liye?" And really, God is that ability in us to care for others.
Yeah, yeah.
Today's kids, and like you said very famously, today's parents are often accused of bubble wrapping our kids. We used to take public transport and walk through school, but we prefer chauffeur driven cars and clean AC buses and flights, and everything perfect in our surroundings. The intention of the parent isn't wrong, but how do we ensure that we let our little ones experience hardship, adversity in their childhood?
In the old days, they would tell the princess to go to the forest. The Gurukul was always in the forest. It was never in the palace. So in the in the Ramayana, Vishwamitra comes to Ram and says, "Okay, come with me to the forest." Why is this forest? The forest is a place where you can't be privileged. You are just like any other animal and you have to survive very difficult. This is the metaphor for we have to train children. In the old days, they used to have rites of passage. Early days, your mother, your bodily coddle, everybody's taking care of you. But then you would be taken on a rite of passage. You'd be thrown in the jungle without anything and you'll say, go survive for 10 days. If you don't survive, you'll die. So your instincts work on it. Now, this part of education is not being focused on. We are creating these concepts of safe spaces and no hate speech and this whole new vocabulary that is emerging. Rather than telling people how to handle hate speech, we are saying we should avoid. No, we don't want to deal with it. I want to protect myself. The world is not, the walls will be shattered. Everybody is going to have these, Ram will be thrown into the forest. And that is something that we need to handle.
As you gathered and researched these portions from the various myths across the globe, which one has been your personal favorite and the one thing that really, really inspired you?
So, the thing is, mythology, there are so many, there cannot be one story which sort of dominates everything because every situation, the stories pop up depending on the situation.
Yeah.
The one thing which always excites me is around the world, they'll always talk about never-ending prosperity, never-ending, there'll be a cornucopia, which is overflowing with food. Or there will be an amrit, Akshay Patra. Akshay Patra is something which is overflowing with wealth. Human beings are aspiring for a situation where you always get what you want without doing anything. And I think that reminds us about human condition, that everybody thinks meko aasani se mil jana chahiye. But the thing is, life mein you have to work, a relationship, a friendship, even resilience. It's like yesterday I was telling someone, kindness ke liye gym hona chahiye, because you can't be kind. It's not a switch off, switch on. You have to practice kindness every day, small acts of kindness, which enables you to be big acts of kindness. Yeah. Just as a six-pack ab cannot be built in a day, which everybody wants to, how do you create kind children? Because if you can't be kind to others, others won't be kind to you. And I think that those things are something these stories are telling me. So these stories are telling me about how human beings want this cornucopia. That's what Instagram and all these things are, right? They are like button press karte hi sab kuch mil jayega, which is why we like Harry Potter. He has a magic wand and everything will be solved. But magic wand is basically not there. There is no magic. There is no Hogwarts. You have to figure it out yourself. We love those stories because we aspire for a world where I can just wave my wand and escape, which is great as an escape, but it also it helps you acknowledge your fears.
Yeah.
What these stories clarify is that you do feel down. There are these monsters which will suck your energy out. There are these things, and you have to. But I don't agree with the way the book is written because it's a very Western model of fighting. They always want to fight. Harry Potter fights, Lord of the Ring fights, everybody fights. Hamare yahan aise nahi baat karte. You have to engage with people, and there are different models of, and everything is not a competition. So that's the one thing which I don't like.
Asking the why question to ourselves.
Yeah. See, the engineering world, many of us, nowadays, if the education is divided into STEM on one side and humanities on the other. And if you learn mathematics, science, and engineering especially, you are told that the cause and effect are measurable and controllable. So that's how science is designed, right? Or it's like you cook, you put salt, it will become salty. You put mirchi, it will become tikha. So it's predictable. And that's what we enjoy about science. We enjoy about technology. Everything is predictable. I know this will happen. But life is not predictable. Life is not predictable. You don't know who you'll be attracted to. You don't know who will hate you. You don't know how it will create jealousy, how it will create anger. You'll be worried, why do people hate me? I'm not a bad person. I have not done anything, but people are getting triggered by what I do and say. And this is life, which is not engineering. And everybody wants to talk about engineering your life. I mean, I know Gurujis who talk about engineering, and that's the scary part. I mean, you are actually talking about, it's not an app. Life is not going to be an app. You can't just say, hi mom, I'm doing fine, means you are fine. No, you are hiding many things. There are many things that are not coming out of your heart. You're not having a heart to heart which cannot be put on WhatsApp or Telegram or text. It cannot be perhaps spoken by word. It could be a hug, a touch, a sharing of a cup of tea with your friend or your partner or with your parent. So this part, in the karma, people keep saying, good karma kya hai? I said, there is no good karma. There is karma. Because when you break an egg, you make it an omelette. But then you have broken an egg. Now you can't. Some action has happened. So that is something that they genuinely believe hum अच्छे लोग हैं, इसलिए अच्छा चीज होना चाहिए. You are trying to guarantee, you're trying to ensure your life. There are no guarantees, and that's what COVID taught us. The most powerful people, the richest people, the Jeff Bezos didn't predict COVID. Elon Musk didn't predict COVID. All these great engineers who can create zillion-dollar businesses and trillion-dollar businesses, none of them could predict or prevent COVID. I think a tiny little virus sabko औकात दिखा दिया. And I think that is what we should share to our children. देखो Jeff Bezos ना वो COVID नहीं पकड़ पाया.
Your book calls is Hope, Wisdom to Survive in a Hopeless World. Do you really believe that we're heading towards a hopeless world?
No, you see, it is the subjective state. We don't know what the world is. The world is what it is. It's an objective reality. But our subjectivity makes it hopeless, hopeful, full of opportunities, full of threats. The world is what it is. It's an object, but we see the world through our subjective lens, which is a major theme in my book. We forget we live in a bubble of subjectivity. And this subjectivity, because everybody around you says, the world is collapsing. You start believing. Sab bol rahe ki, duniya to badal. Oh, India is going to the dogs, man. And we start believing it, and that creates anxiety. Dar lagta hai. And then your children are not, and your child is not going to school, and that anxiety you pass on. Tu padhai nahi karega, to job kahan se milega? And you see the anxiety on, I watch these reels and TikTok, what was called TikTok before. You have these things that with the child, people are actually saying, shadi, government job milega, to fir acha ho jayega, because even if I don't work, I will get salary. And that shows an anxiety that, I may not get a source of income. Or the anxiety that, and I've read these videos, very strange videos, the ladki mujhse shadi karegi, so what if I'm ugly, I'll get a government job, and then she'll marry me. And you're like, oh my God, that's talking about so much anxiety. There is so much fear. And I think then when the lockdown happens and you can't step out of your house and all the dhanda is tough, you're like, at least government job to secure tha. But then you envy all your friends who are making more money in private sector. That doesn't go away. That comes with your government job. So that's the thing. So that, I think, this is what I wanted people to. This hopeless world is a subjective state, not an objective state.
Now, also you say that we feel hopeless because hope exists. But isn't hope what keeps us going? Because if we don't have hope and that desire, that light, that is what ignites us and pushes us forward. But it also makes us feel hopeless, It's the twin coin.
Yes. So one coding creates the other. And that's a great point you have raised, is because, because Swarg exists in our imagination, Nark exists in our imagination. One cannot exist without the other. We construct one ki duniya acha hone wala hai. And when you tell me that, then bura jab hota hai to aur dard hota hai. It's one question. Somebody had once told me a very famous, not famous story, but told me the story about this person who is like, I was unemployed. Then I was told, if you study and get a degree, you will get a job. So he studied, got a degree, but still didn't get a job. And now he's like, now I was unemployed. Now I'm educated unemployed. The pain is worse. Because now I believe I deserve a job because I'm educated. That time I wasn't sure. I had reason to blame. So we construct ideas when we tell children happily ever after stories every night, and life is not happily even one night. And then you are wondering, did my parents lie to me? And then I started losing faith in authority figures who tell me stories. Sab log bolte hain, aise kuch nahi hota hai. I have lost hope because I was told constantly that life is going to be happily ever after. Or Disney is selling the idea of true love, completely unscientific concept. But we allow Disney to repeatedly sell the idea of true love. Only now they've shifted it to sisters and brothers and friends. But this true love as an idea is itself a concept, not telling that, there is different ways of looking at the same thing. They sell one thing again and again, which is a little disturbing idea.
Your tips on how to handle the school of life.
I use this concept a lot in my workshops also when I'm conducting workshops. Rajkumari Matri and Rajkumari Jwala. Mm-hmm. Now, Rajkumari Matri is basically inspired by the fairy tale Princess and the Pea, where this princess goes and sits on a mattress, 20 mattresses, and below there's one pea. And she's like, oh my God, I can't sleep because there was this pebble under my bed. And we're told that is a true princess because she's so sensitive, so sensitive. And there are such stories in Vikram and Vetal series also. This whole idea of the super sensitive person, oh, I'm so fragile, I'm so delicate. And we really admire such people. Oh, she's so fragile, she's so delicate.
I actually wondered why was even Princess and the Pea written? Because that's something that's come to my mind. I have 2 daughters, and that's one story I refuse to read.
And then we have Princess Jwala, who can walk through fire, who is not afraid of fire, and that's resilience. That's saying that, what, tension nahi lene ka life mein. I will manage. For me, Sita is Princess Jwala. And also, I'm very careful when I'm using gender. I'm fully aware that I'm using Rajkumari. If I'm using Rajkumari Matri, I cannot use Rajkumar Jwala. You know what I mean? Which is normally what we do, right? Strong man, fragile woman, these kind. And now Disney, again, I'm sorry I use Disney as an example, but even our Bollywood thinks that if a woman has a sword in her hand, she's a feminist.
Yes.
Of course, after she marries and falls in true love, she gives up her sword. Unless she has to save her baby. Then she elegantly picks up the sword again and rides strange horses. But this whole idea of, this approach, resilience is not about the sword. Therefore, I compare Draupadi and Sita. About life, silence can be resilient. It's about going through the daily grind of life, enjoying it. The daily grind of mind can be like Sisyphus suffering in Greek mythology, or enjoying it and looking forward to that toast and butter and cup of tea every day and enjoying it and saying that it's not a prison. I'm not in the jail. I have agency. I have choices. I can take. The one place where I have choices is how I react to the situation. Everything other choice can be taken away, but that choice nobody can take away from me, and I will hold on to it. I think that is what we need to enable our children to do, and we should develop it, where we develop resilience in small things. Choti baaton mein say that choti baaton ka bura nahi mante. And we can have conversations with nowadays social media. I see some of these reels where they say, usne aise bola, to maine aise kiya. I'm like, why are you fighting? They body shamed me, so I went to jail. I said, it's okay to be body shamed. It's perfectly fine. I don't have to take it badly. I will have another cupcake. So I'm not going to be shamed just because you are shaming me. I'm not going to be shamed. That power is where agency lies, is what I try to talk in my story. Resilience comes when we discover this power within us. I don't have to take your comment. I will consider it. It could be a good comment. It could be a bad comment. So, खाना परोसते हैं, लेकिन खाना तो मेरा responsibility है ना. खाना परोसना आदमी कुछ भी परोस सकता है. But I will say that, no, this is too much. I don't like this. I like this. So it's that.
How is hope related to religion and mythology?
So, really, when I use words like spirituality, I mean deep psychology. It's just deep psychology, because psychology as a subject was invented only 100, 200 years ago. So nobody used the word psychology. We use the word spirituality because spirituality meant the mind. That's all it meant. Spirit basically meant the mind. People thought it was the breath. Then they said it was something else. They didn't know this word mind. Now we know this word mind. And religion basically is when you use psychology and you use these beliefs of people for political and economic ends. That's it. But what matters is that every human being is going through psychological issues 24/7. We are constantly going through, humans are not born with a manual saying this is the purpose of your life. ये करना है तुम्हें कल. We are being told constantly by the world, तुमको ये खाना है, ये पहनना है, ये करना है, वो करना है, ये अच्छा है, ये बुरा है. We're constantly receiving these inputs and we are creating our own operating system and saying, okay, ठीक है, ये अच्छा है, ये बुरा है. And sometimes it's crisis. You're like, oh, this doesn't make sense to me. I don't know what to do. And therefore we look at authority figures and we look at stories. And stories are basically the voices of our ancestors telling us, this, perhaps you should look at life this way, perhaps you should look at life that way. And I think that's what mythologies do. So it's not about religion. Religion is about trying to control you. So it's just one option which comes. If you're born in a Jain family, you're born in a Buddhist family, you're born in a Christian family, there'll be one way saying, dekho, hamare saath rehna hai, to aise rehna hai. So it's about control. So that is part of life. You get that also. But the story part is interesting, because the stories contain many more things beyond control. It talk about why you control, why do your parents want to control you, why is society trying, and why are you trying to control society? Now those things emerge in stories. That's why I focus on the story part of it more than the rules part of it.
Is social media to be blamed for all the negativity and hopelessness mentioned in the book?
So people are negative, and in the old days, I don't know about ladies' toilets, but in gents' toilets, whenever you go, there would be graffiti with very graphic and horrifying things written on it, abusive words, people being shamed. I used to see this in every toilet, every public toilet. Now what has happened is that graffiti which used to happen inside the toilet is being permitted on a common platform because of technology. And everybody thought that once you give freedom to people and then democratize communication, we'll all say lovely things to each other. We didn't realize that inside a heart, especially if you can hide your identity, all your negative things will come out and you will vomit out poison on a soldier. And that has come as a rude shock to people. All psychologists could have told you that. But when anybody would tell you that, once you get freedom, and where it takes a lot of courage not to be negative and to be positive. It takes a lot of work to, our natural instinct is to snarl and bite. And that's what social media has enabled. And it has also brought in a lot of good things, because now I have access to the whole world quickly. And now it is up to us. How do we correlate it? The fact is we will be drawn, and these technologies are designed to make you an addict. And because that's how they make their money. They make their money by, it's legalized addiction, which has been allowed. And maybe 100 years later, people will talk about the evil empires that were being built, but we are effectively working very consciously using science and technology to make the next generation addicts. Now, this is good when you're very old and nothing to do. Then you just love the whole day. You can do the infinite scroll. When you have school, when you have jobs, when you have work to do, then that is not good. But that's life. No, life, maybe you'll always get these. You can't escape this. You can't create a space where everything works. It's up to you to switch off the phone and keep it aside.
Do you think always leads to positivity, or that itself could be stressful, hoping for better times?
So, I love Krishna's famous line in the Bhagavad Gita, Fal ki chinta mat karo. Right. But he's also called the Rasik. Usko ras bahut pasand hai. Ras kahan se aata hai? Phal se aata hai. Because he is the Rasika Priya. He enjoys the good things in life. So he enjoys all the flavors of every fruit. But he's also telling you, Phal ki chinta mat karo. Enjoy it when the fruit is in your hand, but when you're sowing the seed, don't be sure, because you can't control its germination. You can't control its sprouting out. You can't control the leaves. You can't control that when the fruit emerges, before you pluck it, somebody else will take it away. So there's a lot of process between you sowing the seed and eating the fruit. So, phal ki chinta mat karo. So while yes, phal ki ichha hai, chinta mat karo. So I want a better life, or I want a good spouse, or I want a good friend, or I want a good time today's party. But you know what? If it is not, I have my escape button. I have a plan B. I have my insurance policy to protect me. I go for a party, I hope it will be a great time. We'll have a rocking time. And we all have gone through that, right? You think it'll be a great time, and you go and the party turns out to be really boring, and you're like, oh my God, I want to go home and eat chocolates. which is your plan B, which is fine because parties sometimes don't work out. And sometimes you're shocked when you go to a party expecting it to be terrible and it turns out to be fun. So, phal ki chinta mat karo is what Krishna says. And I think that's a great line to have.
How can moms instill a sense of positivity and hope in their kids?
I think storytelling is an easy way where you tell different stories, but don't always give a positive ending. Make people ask the difficult questions. It's okay. Let them experience jealousy through stories. Let them experience hatred and greed through stories. Don't give a advice. Have a conversation. Don't go into judge mode. This is right. This is wrong. Yes, which is what we're trained to do. Unfortunately, this is the colonized mindset. ये सही है, ये गलत है, ये this is वो अच्छा था इसलिए उसको अच्छा चीज मिला, वो बुरा था. Try to talk about the ambiguity in the safe ecosystem called a story. In the safety of the storytelling, you may do this in other parts of your life, but in the story time, at least give yourself that 1 hour saying that I will not judge any character. Let my child say whatever he wants. Ram to loser tha. Achha, now you're like, oh, I don't think I should say that. But you're like, why do you think it's a loser? What do you think he should have done? Then you suddenly, he starts realizing, oh, there is a lot of thought going on over here. But ye kaise karu, wo kaise karu? What do you think Sita should have done? Oh, she should have stayed at home. Oh, that's a very good idea. So that's a nice idea. And you start asking, why do you think it is a nice? And that sort of reveals your child's way of thinking. And he also gets engaged that my mother wants to listen to me. My opinions matter. That's a very important thing for children. Because they're not giving me orders. They are telling me, Acha, tumhara opinion, at least for this 1 hour of storytelling, it's not about telling the story. It's about discussing the story. I think that's the big learning I have had in 25 years of storytelling. Is, of course, when I'm doing a one-man session, I start becoming the child. I ask, but wo to acha nahi tha. And then I go this way and that way. And I start, the child gets confused, but I can see the eyes lighting up because they're like, oh, mera class bhi ek question. Because he's like, oh, yeah, I thought like that also. And I think Ravan is very cool. And I'm like, Ravan is very cool. So you're okay if I steal your tiffin box, right? I just take away your tiffin box. No, Ravan would do that, right? And then he's like, no. And I'm now correlating abduction to tiffin box. I mean, it's not the same thing.
Yeah, but
he's realizing the sense of violation which happens. Why does he not like a bully? But we have to allow children's mind. Their minds are still fresh and they're ready to. But it requires practice. I mean, working with children has not been easy.
What drove you towards mythology?
So it was a hobby, honestly, like anybody else. I was reading Amar Chitra Katha, I was reading Chanda Mama, nothing great. But over time, I realized there was a lot not being told. There were stories that were not being told. So I began by just capturing the stories. Then over time, after reading so many stories, I started analyzing the stories. I said, what is that? And then people kept saying myth is not true. And I said, okay, what is truth? So I think it became just an area of interest for me. And over time, this area of interest, which was my personal, private hobby space, turned into a business opportunity. So it happened organically and it became I didn't expect this to happen, but then I started writing on mythology and people loved what I wrote. And I realized gradually that nobody writes on mythology. We have a country where mythology is celebrated, but we don't write about it. We're ashamed of words like mythology. And I'm like, okay, iska matlab kya hai? And then I realized only white guys write on it. Only the white guys are writing on it. And then we get angry. Arey, sab white hegemony. I said, look, likhte nahi hai. But we will blame them. They're at least writing. So now let me write and see it from my point of view. And then the world opened up because it forced me to look at myself, my truth, my life, my work. And I think that's how these books come. So I'm sharing all this wonderful world of knowledge that I experience.
What is that one thing that gives you hope?
What gives me hope is that I find people are generous. In every society where we go, I was in China sometime and I saw there were people who would try to steal things from you or trick you. But there were also people who were kind and generous and would help you for no reason. For no reason. They would just help you. Or I would see that in a plane when I'm traveling, on airports, I travel a lot and I saw there are always people who help people. A traffic jam happens and someone just appears and tries to do the traffic clearance. And I'm like, why is he doing this? Somebody just comes out of the car and solves. And it happens all the time. Not everybody, but there's one person who is generous at that moment. And he may not be a generous person all his life, but at that moment, I think these incidents give me hope constantly.
Being a mom is synonymous with being hopeful. What is that one thing on hope you learned from your mom?
So my mother would always tell me that life will go through. There is a word in Odia. We are Odias. She would use a word called sabudiniya. Sabudiniya sab din ka. ये
Okay.
सब दिन का नहीं है. So she would always tell me things that when we go to a party, she'll say this food is not sab din ka.
Mm.
What we call dal chawal. There is a dal
Right.
chawal in your life. So तू जितना भी अमीर बनेगा, last में तेरे को दाल चावल चाहिए. So the
Correct.
sab din ka thing was something which is very strong, culture embedded in my head by my mom. And this whole like, what is your dal chawal? बिकॉज वो तुम सिल्वर की थाली में दो, सोने की थाली में दो, मिट्टी के बर्तन में दो, दाल चावल होता है. इफ यू आर लकी इट विल बी फ्रेश, हॉट. इफ यू आर लकी यू विल शेयर इट विद अ फ्रेंड. बट दाल चावल हमेशा रहेगा, सबुदिनिया हमेशा रहेगा. आई थिंक दैट वाज अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट लेसन, व्हिच आई थिंक इट वाज आल्सो अबाउट रेजिलियंस. दैट याद रखो, मेक श्योर दैट दैट इज ऑलवेज देयर इन योर लाइफ, or you can at least give that to your friend. I think that has been a kind of grounding for me. मतलब जितना भी बड़े हो जाओगे, जितना भी पैसा कमाओगे, दाल चावल का सबूत नहीं है. So she would always say this. I think that was one thing which I remember.
We've always loved the illustrations in your book. Why are there no illustrations in this one?
So I am experimenting with this. I love illustrating things. So now I have done books where there are writing and illustrations, but slowly I'm moving into books which are only illustrations and some which are only text. So these are experiments. Also to focus on the idea, because sometimes the visuals also have the ability to draw you away from the writing. So
Right.
because this was a self-help book and we want really people to use this in a, there's a lot of bullet points, very clarity, very simple. We are very difficult to write this book because I'm not, it's also a lot of psychology, and I was very clear, I don't want to deal with mental issues which only a psychiatrist can handle. So you'll see many times I repeat that if it is, you think it's clinical, please go to a professional help. So I didn't want, so my style of drawing we felt would be also very light-hearted in the subject, which is slightly more, it's not heavy and depressing and heavy, but it is also, illustrations have a way of distracting your attention. So I said, let's experiment with this. And I think it worked, the size of the book and everything. So it was just an experiment. It was not like a fully thought through idea. But yeah, that's what I'm going to do. So I'm writing a lot of books now, also with lots of illustrations, with just one line text for children mostly. As you know, I love working with children, I love with adults, I work for different groups. So this was one more experiment.
How do you keep the concept of hope alive amidst all the adversities that seem to plague us today?
I did panic about 3 months down the line. Initially, I did the tea time tales. If you remember, I did that. I genuinely believe it will end in 2-3 months. And then I said, I can't continue. I stopped the tea time tales, and the panic started building up for me. And I really, really got lost. And I would tell my friends, I would call my friends, and I have no problems admitting that I am panicking. I have learned that in life, that just as when you have a stomach upset, don't hide it, tell people you have a stomach upset, because we are embarrassed to talk about a stomach upset or something else. Don't ever hide the fact that you have a mental issue, you're feeling depressed, because they go at the early stages for help so that it doesn't blow out of proportion. And I remember at that time, I was very, very anxious, and my friend sat with me, and my income had stopped completely because my lectures had stopped completely. And I was like, oh my God, how will I pay my EMI? All those things which were irrational. I mean, logically, I had nothing to fear, but my emotions were going out of control. And I think I spoke to friends at that time. And that has always been important. I believe reaching out to people at the right time, and I allow people to reach out. When people talk to me, and I even in parties, I don't just do small talk. I invariably direct the conversation towards issues, and somehow, somewhere in the middle of the conversation, it's like one of the many things in the buffet. You have small chat, you have bitchy chat, you have time pass chat, but you need to have one or two serious chats all the time. And I think so people, my friends have been kind to me. They have helped me out at that time, and I hope to be kind to them when they need help, because we all go through these days, right? And I think that has helped me keep the hope alive. A good network of friends.
Thank you so much for having this conversation with us, Devdutt. And it is an absolute pleasure. I'm so glad that I got this opportunity to speak with you. And parents who are listening to us, remember, This too shall pass. On days when you feel like a lot's happening around you and there's chaos and uncertainty is non-stop, breathe. Breathe and tell yourself all is well. Do read the book and let us know your feedback, share it on social media, and also, of course, what part of this interview are you that really sparked a hope, a sense of hope, or a ray of hope within you? Also, what part of this conversation sparked a ray of hope within you, and which was your favorite story? Please do take screenshots of this episode wherever you're listening to it or watching it, and tag us on Instagram. It's at Kidsstoppress and at Mansi.Zaveri. And of course, don't forget to stay tuned for more conversations, and make sure if you're watching us on YouTube, you hit the bell icon on YouTube. And if you're listening to us on a podcast, most definitely please subscribe and leave us a review, because trust me, I want to read all those reviews that you write for us. And of course, hope comes from sharing. So please do share this episode with three of your closest friends, because we all need a ray of hope and positivity in our lives.